Okay, everyone, welcome to Joint Powers Authority Board meeting. It's 2 o'clock. She can catch up with us in a minute. First order of business. Okay, this is the meeting of March 23rd, 2023. Wyandotte Creek Groundwater Sustainability Agency, in case somebody doesn't know where we're at. And we're waiting for Janice to do the Pledge of Allegiance. We will now do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You didn't miss a beat, you know? Pretty good. Okay, roll call, please.
Board Member Connolly.
Here.
Board Member Goodson.
Here.
Board Member Bynum.
Here.
Board Member Daly.
Here.
Board Member Riston.
Here.
Okay, next up is the regular business. The board may approve the minutes of February 23rd. These aren't on consent. Okay. Anyway, consideration of Wyandotte Creek. Well, I got to do the first one, the minutes. Anybody want to pull the minutes? Any comments on the minutes?
I make a motion we approve the board minute meetings from the February 23rd, 2023 board meeting.
Second.
And so prior to, I have a question because I had connected with Jackie Glover today, and I said, I know I left a few minutes early, but I didn't see where you visited was there a schedule change for this year, or we're leaving it as is?
I don't
On
know
the
how to
dates?
answer the.
We adopted the calendar. So the calendar that was presented in the packet was that last time?
It was last
yeah,
time.
that's how,
So
that
there's
was
no
what was said.
changes.
There was no changes to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so any other comments? Any public comment? All those in favor? Oh, we got to call it a roll, or do we? No, I don't. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, consideration of Wyandotte Creek GSA 5-year revenue projections and fee options. Okay, this is where the rubber hits the road right now.
That's me. All right. So what you have before you is the consideration of the 5-year revenue projections and some options. And Eddie Teasdale will be speaking shortly from Ludorf and Scalmanini, our consultant for the project. But just as a quick review, last month we looked at some projected revenue needs and potential budgets for the GSA. And we have since updated those projections. And what you'll see, what is in your packet, are two scenarios, one with grant funding and one without grant funding. So we won't know. As if you recall, we submitted a grant application for this under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Grant Program last December, and we'll hear back on that with preliminary awards, hopefully in June, and final awards in the fall with some grant agreements shortly thereafter, anticipating hopefully that we'll get some funds in January or so of 2024. But we won't know what we've been awarded, if anything, until that time. So we have made some assumptions in the scenario with grant funding and some without. So, and Eddie will cover those in more detail shortly. And these projections will be used in the fee option evaluation, and today we will discuss some potential fee options that will be more fully vetted in the technical memo and the fee study that will be coming over the next few months. And then also in your packet is some public outreach information materials that are in draft form that we have posted them on the website, but they are subject to revision. And so that information is in there. We are, really working with public outreach, taking into consideration some of the suggestions that this board gave us in reaching out to well drillers and other local agencies. So working on on doing that over the course of the next couple of months. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eddie Teasdale from Ludorf and Scalmanini Consulting Engineers, and he will walk you through the budget projection, revenue needs, and everything else.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Don't forget your...
And so we're going to get answers like how many parcels there are and who would go after. You're going to cover all that for us?
I believe so.
Yes.
Good.
So I guess, as Kemi mentioned, what you have in front of you, there are two budget tables. The structure of the tables are very similar to what you looked at last month, but we worked with staff to really refine the costs. So big picture, it's good news, I think it is, we were able to reduce the total cost by about 25% compared to what was shown last month. And we can kind of quickly go through that, and I can kind of show you, at least on the first page you're looking at. So this is assuming we're not going to get any of the grant funding. So last month, I think, at least on the professional services, well, this month the professional services are $67,500. So it's about a $20,000 reduction from the original budget we had presented. Office expenses, they're about half of what we had shown last month. And so when you kind of tally those up for the GSA administration fee, last month I think we were showing about $140,000. So right now we're about $97,000. And again, those costs really are just sort of the administrative costs related to kind of managing the GSA. And then the bottom half of the table, that has to do with Sigma compliance. And that's the 5-year updates, the annual reports. There's some coordination that occurs, some sort of developing maybe some ideas on how to implement a data management system, grant procurement. We have some contingencies in both of these items. So last month, when you looked at this, I need to flip my table here. I think those total costs were around $155,000, and then right now we've got them down to about $125,000, at least for fiscal year 23-24. So when we add up those, it's about $223,000 this month. Last month it was about $294,000. So I guess are there any questions?
Can you do it like 3 months in a row and then we won't have to get any money?
I could try. We can go back and come back next year, yeah, or next month.
It was an idea.
So that's sort of an overview. Again, that's assuming we do not get any grant funding. And then if you kind of flip to the next spreadsheet, the administrative costs you'll see are the same, the $97,000. But if we get some of the grant funding, that's going to support the compliance costs. So those could be as low as $21,000 a year if we get the grant funding. So it's about, what is that, 100 and something thousand different. Let's call it $100,000 difference per year if we get the grant funding.
Okay.
So I think we're looking for a motion to kind of approve those revenue projections, because what we need to do now is we move into looking at fee options. So I think we briefly touched on this at the last board meeting, and there's a couple of ways. There's several ways to look at that. So now we agree on the fee, the revenue needs. So now it's how do we allocate those costs amongst the stakeholders. So there's a couple of ways that we can look at doing this, and that's part of. Kemi had mentioned this fee technical memo that's going to come out in April. So we're going to look at these options and try to figure out, what the cost is, as an example, per acre, what the cost could be irrigated versus non-irrigated. We could come up with a hybrid approach. So I thought what we could do is we could talk about some concepts, and then I do have some.
Let's get the fee over. Any questions,
Yeah.
comments about how they arrived at the total we're going to need?
One thing that I thought I would share about the administration fees is that staff really thinks that with Wyandotte Creek GSA that your involvement in the near term might be fairly minimal in terms of not having to have regular monthly meetings and things like that, especially once we start with implementing any projects or funding that we get from the grant application, where we would meet more for providing you with updates. Again, if you recall, Wyandotte Creek subbasin is not in dire straits, right? And so it's just kind of managing the basin at its current level with some improvement so that we can just improve the groundwater levels, storage, things that we will be needing to focus on the basin. Where the basin will benefit is on the interconnected streams, and we anticipate that DWR will come out with some guidance on that, and then hopefully some of the grant funding will help us with that. That kind of analysis and additional information. Other things that we as staff would be doing, working with the public, and outreach is also the interbasin coordination. So those are things that we would just bring back to this board as updates, inputs, if there's any decisions that need to be made as part of those those processes, then we would bring that to the board, but not anticipating that we would be meeting monthly. Perhaps it might just be quarterly.
Quarterly.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind, in the event the inevitable happens, there would be a special meeting
Right.
3 days prior to, with the notice 3 days prior.
Right. And reminding you also that the administrative costs would be shared with the VINA GSA in hiring a program manager. That would be what we're anticipating would be run out of the County Department of Water and Resource Conservation, and talking to the Board of Supervisors about that as well soon. So that shared the cost, and that really helps keep the cost down for Wyandotte Creek, because unlike this basin, VINA does have some more issues and will need more involvement, so they will pay for a bulk of the cost of that program manager.
Okay, so it's questions or comments about the budget? Then if there is no more, is there a public comment electronically? Or?
No, we'd have no comment at this time.
So what we need to do is have a motion to adopt the budget as proposed, both of them, in
Both.
case.
Correct.
So somebody want to make that motion?
Right. I move that we adopt both budgets. So moved.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Thank you for all your hard work. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we have your budget. Now you're going to kind of enlighten us what we're going to do towards raising the money for the budget.
Correct. So again, these concepts will be included in a TM that's going to come to you all in April. But the idea is now, how do we allocate these costs? And we touched on this last month, but there's a couple of common ways to do it, but also I really want to sort of develop some dialogue and look at other ways that maybe we can go about this analysis. So the most simple approach is you just allocate the costs on a per acre basis. So it's a flat fee, everybody pays the same.
What if it includes areas that have domestic water delivered to their door, which may or may not well water. Are they included in that fee too?
They would be, yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to get my head around this all month, but do we know how many parcels of land there are in the district?
We do, yes.
Well, that would be very important, because if this is a very small fee per parcel, we could probably do a 218 or whatever it is. I'm not an expert at that. You are.
Yeah, and we've had conversations with legal counsel. I don't know if they're on the phone. Yeah, so if we can talk about the pros and cons of that. But I think the concepts, like a flat fee per acre, is one idea. You could look at a charge irrigated versus non-irrigated. That's another approach. And then you can also look at hybrid approaches. So you say, Eddie, what's a hybrid approach? So one idea could be, remember we have the administrative costs and then we have the compliance costs. Some GSAs are saying, okay, well, we feel like everybody should pay their fair share of the GSA administrative costs, but individuals who perhaps don't use water or irrigate with surface water, we don't feel like they should have to pay their fair share of the compliance costs. So you could push the compliance costs onto those who use groundwater. That's a concept, or use water, period. So that's what I mean by this hybrid approach. Does that make sense?
How many parcels?
Sure. So total parcels, well, let's talk about total acreage first. So there's about 51,000 acres within the Wyandotte Creek subbasin. Okay. 40,000 of those acres are in Butte County, or owned by Butte County.
No.
Or owned, they're Butte County, yeah. Butte County
Located
parcels.
within Butte
located within
County.
Butte County, not owned. The city of Oroville is about 6,700 acres. And then, according to our numbers, Thermalito is about 5,300.
That sound right?
Sound right? So if you kind of apportion the costs sort of based on that total acreage in the subbasin, I mean, I'm just going to get my calculator out here. I'm not checking emails, I promise. So if you take let's just talk about it. Let's say that you take the 223,175,
Buck an acre, you're good.
divide that by the total acreage in the subbasin. It's more than $1 an acre.
That's,
It's about $4 an acre.
is it?
Yeah. That's a flat fee. So that's assuming everybody pays the same. So and we have, if you kind of look at irrigated versus non-irrigated in the subbasin, there's about a third of the subbasin's irrigated, 2/3 is non-irrigated. So you can start to look at these concepts, and this all will be in the TM. Right now, I just need to get some ideas from you all on other options you'd like us to look at. I'll give you some crazy ones. Let's talk about it. So I know there's some entities, Tehama County, we're working up there, where they're looking at a wellhead fee. So they're looking at, trying to develop a cost based on the diameter of wells. But what does that involve? That involves well registration, and so it can be looked at, but these are the concepts that other entities are looking at. We've seen it where perhaps you would look at sort of within a certain area how much of that water is surface water versus groundwater, and try to carve that out. But again, the more complex the methodology, there's a cost to do that analysis.
Right. I think the way I'd get my head around it is a minimal fee for everybody, and then if you irrigate, we'd have to make it more per acre.
Okay.
And the minimal fee could be, like you said, it's only $4 or something a year.
Yeah.
Well,
Or it could be less. And
It could be less. It'll be
like
less.
like utilities, you have your base rate, and then you have a fee
Yeah.
based on whatever
Right.
the other
But I think
metrics are.
as long as we keep this down, we're not going to get a whole bunch of people all riled up.
And so my question is, what is your recommendation?
He doesn't sit up here, so we don't have.
No, I mean,
Give me your
sure.
your
No, I mean, I will.
opinion.
I live in Butte County.
I'm teasing.
Yeah. No. I think that it should be based on water usage.
Yeah, I do.
But I agree, and I live in the Vina subbasin. I'm willing to pay the administrative costs because I think that's just part of what's required now because of Sigma. But I think there needs to be a hybrid approach. So the more groundwater you use, the more you pay. So
I agree.
Okay.
So what if we went to the groundwater suppliers, the domestic water suppliers, and have them just pay a fee for all their customers? They'd still pass it on, correct?
they would pass it on, yeah.
One of the
Thank-
things that we're looking at in the Vina subbasin is as you break up the fee. So Eddie just gave you all of the acreages. Is then he could also divide the cost by what percentage the city of Oroville is of that total cost, what percentage Thermalito is of that cost, and I can't do any of this math in my head, but let's just say Thermalito's was, $25,000 of that total 200 or whatever the cost is. So you could also break it up that way where we see what the Butte County landowners pay, what Thermalito would pay, what the city of Oroville would pay. And Thermalito might just say, okay, we'll cover that $25,000. And as they do their 218 rate increase, I think they're going through that process now, they could build that into that cost.
Well, I think it's a lot more palatable to an individual homeowner that has domestic water if we're not showing them a separate bill. And or what if you own a sixplex or some sort of apartment building and you get this bill and you're going, what the? Wouldn't it be easier if we could cooperate with the water providers to do that? Because we're just looking for a small fee, like I think fairly, the admin fee. But there is a benefit because if they're using any well water, we're making sure they keep it and it's healthy. But then with the individual wells, I think you'd have to go a fee for domestic, just me talking, per acre or whatever, and then a fee for commercial usage, because we're actually protecting them. And I don't think if we keep the fee, I mean, if a farmer gets a bill for under $100, they're not going to be too upset.
Right.
They're not going to be happy, but they're not going to be.
Right. I think
If we start billing them a couple $1,000 or something,
yeah.
this room's going to be full.
So you want to
people.
fly below the radar and
Well, I want to do it as
disturb
reasonably as we can without upsetting
a
everybody.
slight ripple, not a wave.
Right.
Well, there you go. Isn't that how we're supposed to do it? I'm sorry, I forgot you sit here in the
Yeah.
city council.
Come on, Bill.
But does that make sense? Has anybody got any changes or ideas beyond what I'm saying?
So there's a base per acre?
You
could
could
do it
look,
for-
what is it
okay.
now if we just do a flat
Well,
fee?
you said $4 an acre.
It's $4.34 if you just took the total and divided it by all the
In
acreage.
the simplest
Okay.
way possible, that would be $4 an acre.
So as an example, if you did that, the city of Orville would be on the hook for $30,000 a year.
Yeah, so I have 60 acres, so it would be $240 a year.
Yep.
And somebody who lives on half an acre, how would that work out?
You'd have a minimum. You'd kind of have to look at it and see what it would, because there's a cost to kind of get this on the tax roll. But in that example, say it's $2.50 or whatever it is. That's what they would pay.
But are you irrigated? Is all your land irrigated?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so you would be one of the people that would benefit the most by protecting your groundwater. Unless your neighbor put in a test well and let you. He put a test well. on his
But we
property.
talked about this in the financial
Yeah.
meeting. Everybody benefits,
Everybody.
not just people who use groundwater.
Right.
Everybody benefits.
Okay.
To protect the groundwater.
Sure.
And that's true
That's true.
statewide, and that's why everybody has to be a part of it.
Right.
But
That's a good way to look at it.
How
I
would
just
you
know
feel
it.
about that, Bill Bynum? Because there's two bills. And
yeah, I think
200
I think the $4 an acre is reasonable.
is reason. Okay.
But then, and I agree with this bill over here, that the more you spread it out, the better, and you keep it low for everybody. And I like the idea of the water districts passing it on.
Sure.
So they pay it and pass it on.
Which is like, as an example, the city would get a bill for $30,000 a year, and then they would have to figure out how.
Well, they have
Yeah.
Cal Water
Yeah.
and South Feather and TID in
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
So we'd probably have to look to the water purveyors and providers and see
Right.
if they'll play.
Has,
I'm sorry.
no,
Go ahead, please.
Please do.
Has anybody connected with, you've had conversations with city?
We haven't. I think, and that's the process that we're starting with the city of Chico and Cal Water, and we would need to do the same with the city of Oroville and the water purveyors. I think
Right.
that would involve, obviously representatives from the city of Oroville and how that would work. And and I think legal counsel would have to guide us on that. There would need to be perhaps agreements, obviously, in place. And I'm not sure, honestly, how all of that works with, because some of them are surface water providers. That adds the level of complication. Whereas, so we could do it that way, where Oroville gets a bill and they pay it, or it could just be every parcel. We just send every
Orville isn't in the
landowner.
water business.
What?
Sure is.
Orville doesn't sell water.
Right, exactly. And the city of Chico is in the same position where they're
Okay.
not the water provider. Cal Water is, but Cal Water isn't, at the table as a member agency. They're not an eligible entity. So there is a complication with that, and I'm not exactly sure how that part works. But we could send it to individual landowners within the city.
If we use the water providers it's clean because we don't have to create a separate bill, and just the postage on a bill for $5 a year it'd be, it's
Right.
ridiculous.
I think the challenge is, and maybe Andrew, legal counsel, can weigh in on this, is that the water providers aren't necessarily billing the landowners. It could be the residents, and really it's a landowner parcel
it's per
fee.
parcel.
So that might present a challenge, although a landowner is going to pass it on to a renter.
Yeah, but most landowners provide water and garbage. Most landlords
Maybe
do.
not all of them.
It's required by law in the county
Okay, in the county, okay.
to provide garbage anyway.
And South Feather's heavily involved in this.
They're part of the advisory committee. Yes.
Did they have any input?
We haven't had that conversation with them. The advisory committee hasn't been completely active in this process. They will become more active as more of the public outreach occurs.
They're the ones who'd be doing the billing. I agree with you on that. I think Cal Water, South Feather, and Thermalito, they need to be at the table, and they need to have input on how they're going to approach it. But I think that's the way to go.
Because that's the majority of our parcels, right? Small ones. And again, to print, prepare, print, and bill would be ridiculous for us. And unless they're so generous, they'll just pay it.
You had a
There's
question?
always humor in the room.
right.
Well, you would still have to, approximately 40,000 acres, that's just the county that they'll still have to send supplemental
Yeah.
funds to.
Right. But
That would be it. That would all be on the tax roll.
Tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
either way, I guess it's,
Either way, the county will be billing individual
Right.
landowners.
be a lot easier if you guys did.
I think something else that's been brought up, and nobody likes the idea of metering. And I'm not saying that's going to be not going to be an idea, but seeing what that might cost per acre, don't even bring it up.
Don't even go there, man. They tar and feather us right here.
Yeah. Okay.
That is one of the really hot button items. I mean, if our water was like the San Joaquin Valley, where you know that you're actually damaging your neighbor every time you turn your pump on, I could see, defending meters as a way to being more equitable. But up here where water, we exercise and it's been pretty much coming back, I think you're about 20 years too early for that. And what do you guys think?
Moot.
I don't think I could get anybody to agree to put a meter
Oh,
on their well. They would just go,
not in this area.
No.
No. I have one question, I guess, or comment. We've talked a lot about fees and how we're going to pay, get fees out there to all the public. Has anybody thought about how we're going to sell this to the public?
yeah, that's right here. There's
Yeah.
a flyer in here.
Well, we can talk about that.
I mean, I don't
next.
mean to talk about it now, but I mean, I think that with everything else that we're discussing, we need to also include in the
Yeah.
plan something that, because you have to notify them. If you
Right.
put 25 cents on somebody's tax bill, you have to tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about
We-
that in a second. That whole process.
There
in a
are
minute.
people out there that will scream and holler over 25 cents on their tax bill.
Right.
So
You know?
we did open up that dialogue in the last meeting.
Yeah.
We just never
Okay,
came
well,
to
I missed last meeting
it-
because I was,
We,
but, I think that's just as, maybe not just as important, but it is very important.
Absolutely.
And I worked at the district attorney's office in the investigation bureau, and I can't tell you how many times I went downstairs to the auditor's office or the tax collector's office to break up if nothing else, a verbal altercation because somebody was complaining about $2 extra on their tax bill.
Right.
So I just think that that's important also.
Absolutely.
Enough said.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's a little bit scary, actually.
We'll open it up behind a bulletproof.
Yeah.
So with the technical memo, I think do you have what you need? And
I think Kyle was going to say,
Yeah, if you don't mind, real quick. I think when we're looking at options, I think it's hard to paint with a broad brush and make it very simple, even though it'd be the cheapest, just because it's gonna get really expensive, and I think you'll lose something along the way. And I think you have to balance fairness, equity, make it politically palatable and feasible to implement.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, I think you can't just do a simple, flat acre rate. I think it's going to, like you suggested, be a hybrid of some kind. I think usage is probably the most fair way to go about it. But also, I'm going to imagine there's going to have to be some kind of flat rate, whether it's an acre or parcel, to go along with it. But that would be my suggestion, that it's some kind of flat rate along with a usage fee, maybe based on crop type or evapotranspiration or whatever.
Sure.
I mean, I think there's probably lots of options there to figure that out, but I think that seems to be the most reasonable. And then I have a question regarding what would be included in irrigated ground. Would wetlands be included in that? It's not agriculture, but they are ground.
you probably wouldn't, because who would be on the hook to pay for the wetlands? That's kind of how we look at it. But we could, yeah.
Well, it is a big user of groundwater
Yeah.
in the summertime when they're, and it's all groundwater,
Right.
for like the southern part of the basin. And so I just think that should at least be considered. So that way, it's spreading out across all of the users, agriculture.
Like a private club that's irrigating for nesting birds and so forth.
It provides, it's necessary, but it is also a large user. So I think that should at least be considered.
for managed wetlands.
They should be probably treated like irrigated land then, in some manner, or close.
So just so I'm clear, so I'm hearing maybe 3 or 4 different options. So we look at a flat fee per acre.
Fee.
We look at irrigated versus non-irrigated, and then a couple of hybrid options. So it could be a hybrid option might look like, well, everybody pays their fair share of the admin, and then most of the compliance is pushed on the folks that maybe irrigate. That's one option, one hybrid option. It could be looking at land use. So folks that, it could be a flat fee on the admin side, or maybe a lower flat fee for everybody, and then maybe the usage factor gets put into both sort of pots of the money.
Based
something.
on,
Usage.
crop type or usage or
Yeah.
consumptive use, whatever you want to use there,
Yeah.
I guess. I think that seems
I like
fairly
that.
reasonable.
Last option.
Sure. So we had some initial conversations because to look at usage based on even OpenET, they're looking at they're doing this in the San Joaquin Valley, and it's anywhere, just the technology to do this is anywhere from 60 cents to about $1.20 an acre.
Okay.
So kind of keep that in mind. We've had some internal discussions, so it's maybe this is too much information, but just tell me to shut up. But on the annual report, to estimate groundwater pumping, we're utilizing OpenET. So the thought is, could we kind of capitalize on some of that and get those costs, down from $1 down to maybe 20 cents an acre? So, but we'll look at some of that. So that way, it's a way to kind of keep track of that. So there's a fee there.
So it would almost be cheaper, well, I don't know, maybe, but if you had like a tiered crop type or, tier it based off the
Yep.
crop type.
You could look at
instead
like
of-
permanent crop Yeah, I mean, there's a
Okay.
couple of different ways to look at it. And then within this memo, there'll be the pros and the cons of each and the, how complex it is to manage.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And the additional costs associated with those. And legal counsel will be reviewing
Yeah.
the technical memo
Okay.
as well.
Great.
Yeah, I think when you start looking at usage, that's where I think it starts to kind of creep into perhaps like not a 218, but a Prop 26. But we can get this information out there, and then we can obviously legal counsel will review all this beforehand. So
Yeah, and I didn't mean to make it like a usage like to the point of like metering or something,
Right.
but like
Relative usage.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
I agree with that. But yeah, okay, so are we gonna have people self-report? There's another cost, right? Who goes out and determines what somebody's doing on their land? What if they say I'm dry land hay farming, they're actually flood irrigating? How would we know?
well, OpenET, it's sort of satellite imagery, sort of that you're using, so that could be looked at.
I know, but you're spying now.
I mean, we for the annual
I
report.
guess it's
yeah,
okay in
yeah.
a satellite, but not good with a drone. I don't know how that works. I guess
Absolutely.
because you can shoot the drone down. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think when we set in the interviews before we went into contract with Ludorf, that was their partnership with Land IQ was a big part of,
Okay.
or a big appealing point to their outfit. So they've got, I think, a lot of that data already, right, or close.
Well, I mean, we use Land IQ data for the 2022 annual report.
Yep.
In addition to OpenET, so I mean, we have it all, so it's, we can kind of capitalize on that effort
Yeah.
to help with support this.
So
effort.
it should, a lot of that should.
So we don't have to have some guy drive
Right.
a truck looking.
Right, yeah.
All right.
So we could kind of tier from some of the data that we use for the annual reports. And if that's something that we get every year as part of the annual report updates, it's not necessarily necessary for the annual reports. But if we build that into the annual report costs, then we could probably use the information for this effort, knowing that that is an additional cost. But at least if we're using it for two different reasons, then it might be worth it. And Ludorf is under contract to do those for the next 4 years. So
Okay.
So I think I've got some pretty good direction on options. So I think
okay.
I'm done.
Right. I just maybe stay there for just a minute. So
Yeah.
I do want to circle back to Director Riston's comment about public outreach. So one of the things that we do have scheduled is a public workshop in April 11th. It'll be an evening workshop. It'll cover a lot of these things. We're having it at the Butte County's HR training room over there at our offices. And so that will be on April 11th, and I believe it's at 6 to 7:30. We will be doing one for Vina GSA, so hopefully we'll learn from that one and bring over what
not to do.
what not to do. So that meeting is scheduled then, and as part of that, we will have some frequently asked question sheets, fact sheets, and building those and including those on the website, and just doing that outreach to the public for so that they're informed and they're not. Also, as part, if we go the Proposition 218 route, there is a public notification process where everybody would receive information in the mail about any fees that are being imposed, and they would have an opportunity to do a protest ballot as part of that process, which you're familiar with Thermalito. So that would be part of that whole 218 process.
So in the budget, do we have money set aside for education?
Yes, there's
Okay, good.
an outreach component.
Outreach is what it's under? Oh, there it is. Okay. It's not very much, so.
Well, there's two. There's still two locations. Let's see.
Yes, I think in the admin there's 2,500, and then in the compliance there's about 10,000.
Yeah.
Okay, 10,000.
Yeah.
Here it is. Oh, it's under
Oh yeah.
coordination.
Coordination
too.
and outreach. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that would be part of.
But that's something that we may have to adjust. If we find out that this gets legs and we've got a lot of bad information being spread out there, we may have to adjust our budget to do a more thorough outreach. Got to weave and duck when you're in
Yeah.
politics.
As a consultant too, sometimes you got to wear a bulletproof vest, especially for these topics. So
Like meters.
I just think at some point people will ask questions about meters, and I think, you know,
Our biggest thing, I've told
Yeah.
so many people, we are not looking at
yeah,
meters.
yeah,
Because it's a red flag.
Yep.
I could be at the Eagles and somebody from Palermo would ask me,
yeah.
and they've just got a domestic well. Actually, I have people in Palermo that we can hook them up to South Feather, and it will cost them less for the water than it'll cost them to run the pump. But we were going to have to save their well because they want to keep it. So that's the only way we could get that domestic water out there. Which
Kyle-
it doesn't make sense. It costs more to run your well, and
Right.
it has a good chance of being polluted.
It's just that, yeah, Big Brother, just leave us alone. Won't have
Yeah.
that opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I'd put a well in my backyard if I could. In Chico, I would.
I think you probably can. I know you can in Orville.
I don't think you can in the city limits in Chico.
I think you can in Orville. I looked into it in
Really?
Orville. Just nobody's ever thought of doing it. Just drilling a well at 60 feet, you have all the water you need.
I'm just gonna stay quiet.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, because she probably has one in her backyard.
So you have what you need, Eddie?
I think so.
Okay.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So next up is
Yes, thank you.
verbal management committee updates.
I think the only thing I was gonna make sure I announced was the public workshop, and see if Christina, she's listening online, if there's anything else that comes through my phone in the next 5 seconds. I think that's it.
Okay. Anyone want to get up and do public comment? No electronic public comment? All right. Then we're adjourned, and we'll be back here April 27th at 2 p.m. Great meeting. It's a
Thank
hard
you.
meeting.
Appreciate the information.
You realize you have to put